Hello, and welcome to the Text, Tweet, or Snap, Decoding Today's College Student webinar. My name is Katie Stovall, and I will be your technical producer and moderator this evening. This webinar will be presented by Megan Hare and Caitlin Parker. Before we start the presentation, let's take a moment to ensure that everyone is ready and familiar with the webinar control panel. On the right side of your screen, you will see the attendee control panel, and on the left is the webinar viewer window. This viewer window will display the presenter screen when the webinar begins. The control panel can be minimized or expanded by clicking on the horizontal double arrow button in the upper left corner. Minimizing the panel allows for a better view of the presentation. There are a few features of the control panel that you should know. First, be familiar with the raise your hand button. This button is located along the left side of the control panel. It allows you to virtually raise your hand if you have a question or want to respond to a question being asked by the presenter. Clicking the button will raise your hand, and clicking it again will lower it. Another important feature of the control panel is the questions pane. To submit a question, type it into the question box. These may be questions related to the presentation or technical questions related to the GoToWebinar system. You may also be asked by the presenter to type your ideas or response here as part of an exercise during the webinar. Please send a quick note in the questions pane now. Please feel free to submit questions at any time. These are being monitored, and we will try to respond quickly if we see something that shouldn't wait until the end. During the webinar, you may also be asked to respond to a polling question or survey. Make sure you take the time to participate, as your input and ideas are valuable to the group. Be sure to stay attentive and to interact as much as possible during this webinar. The quality of your experience depends on your attention and participation. Try to avoid the distractions of email, checking Facebook, instant messaging, or working on other tasks at your computer. If you need to step away for a moment, do not close the GoToWebinar system, as you will be required to log in again if you wish to rejoin the seminar. If you experience technical difficulties, one option is to call in using the audio number on the pane there. It can be found when you hit audio. The webinar will be recorded and archived online to view at a later date. It should be up in about 2 weeks. All right, guys, I think I'm going to go ahead and hand the mic over to you.
Thank you so much, Katie. Good evening, everyone. We're so excited to be presenting this webinar tonight. So again, my name is Megan Hari, and Caitlin Parker is on the line. And this webinar is called Text, Tweet, or Snap, Decoding Today's College Student. And so I am the Assistant Director at Washington State University. I've been in my role for a few months. I've been in Greek Affairs for a couple years now. I was a Kappa undergraduate at Florida State University. So I'm out here on Pacific time zone, so the sun is still out. And then we have Caitlin Parker on the line. Caitlin, do you want to share a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I'm Caitlin. I am currently the Interim Assistant Director of Fraternity and Sorority Involvement at the University of Montana. I just moved on from my role as coordinator, so the last year and a half I was advising the Interfraternity Council, and now I am advising both the men and the women. And I have a really great job because I actually get to be the advisor where I was an undergrad at. So I was a Beta Phi at Montana as well.
So just a little bit about what we'll cover tonight. We're going to cover today's college students, the benefits of social media, a little bit of student development theory, because that's Caitlin and I's specialty since we're in higher education, and then we'll cover just some effective social media uses as well. So get excited.
Okay, and hopefully we won't bore you all. We're not going to take up the full hour. So this screen just shows an overview of the most kind of popular social media sites that students are using. Pinterest, most people are familiar with. Twitter is starting to become more popular than Facebook even now. Instagram, Google+, and LinkedIn. Some people aren't as familiar with Google+. A lot of people use parts of Google's social media website, like Google Hangout. It's kind of like Skype. A lot of people use it to do remote chapter meetings, stuff like that, etc. We'll kind of go through in parts of the presentation the way students use all these forms of social media, as well as how in our roles and working with chapters, they can use them outside of the realm, I guess, of student development. So I'll let you all look at that. I'm not going to go through and read all of it because a lot of it is stuff we already know, but there's some really interesting facts and figures in there. So just take the time to read that at some point. But we can move on.
Great. So we'll just jump straight into some student development theory here, which I hope not to bore you. We just have one slide on this specific theory, which I spent 2 years of my master's studying student development theory. So I will just give a quick and fast overview of it. But I think it's really important to kind of understand some student development theory, just because we know that most of y'all are advisors and you're working directly with the chapter women, so it might be helpful to know just kind of what they're going through as college students and chapter members. So anyways, this is the 7 vectors of student development, and so there are the 7 listed there. As you can see, achieving competency, managing emotions, moving through autonomy toward interdependence, developing mature interpersonal relationships, establishing their identity, developing their purpose, and then also developing integrity. So these vectors can be thought of as a series of stages or tasks that deal with their feeling, their thinking, believing, and the relating to others. And so the chapter women that you're dealing with, that you're working with, they may progress through these different vectors at different rates. So I think that's important to know. It doesn't just happen their first year, second year, junior year, senior year. It kind of varies. And so they also have a tendency to interact with each other. So there's not just a 1 through 7 step-by-step guide that you know, is easy to follow. But this can cause reevaluation of the issues associated with the vectors that had already been worked through. So they'll kind of mix and mingle, and so the women that you're working with could be trying to establish their identity while also trying to manage their emotions at the same time. So they kind of build on one another. They don't follow a strict sequential order. And it's helpful because developing in multiple vectors or developing, you know, with a couple of those numbers at the same time, it will allow individuals to function with greater stability and intellectual complexity. So that's fun. I know you guys are like, please, I hope you're not snoring. So the majority of college students today, they're obviously range from 18 to 25. So it's a huge time in their adult development. It's their first time away from home. They're not with their parents anymore. So there's many studies on this time period in a person's life. It's resulted in a lot of theories, obviously. So during this time period, you move from adolescence to adulthood development. So as a whole, kind of identity development takes individuals through 2 experiences, kind of the exploration experience and then the commitment experience. So college is a key period of time for both of these actions for the women. There's many theorists. There's one, his name is Arnett, that explains that emerging into adulthood, will be a time when skills are developed for their career exploration, for maintaining relationships, and kind of finding their own social independence. So considering the internet and social media and the college experimentation away from their parents, you know, provides a lot of that identity exploration. So through these 7 vectors, your chapter women, through this process, the students will integrate and encounter their own values and ideas. So again, Chickering, who you'll see at the bottom, he's the one that developed this theory. He kind of took identity development for college students into other developmental needs. So from a study of college student social media use, their needs and gratification, they were found that a number of the vectors, those 7 listed, were met. And social media kind of plays a part into that, which is why we covered this. So there's a little gist of that. Basically, those 7 vectors help in developing the students that you're working with towards success and their identity through kind of meeting their emotional needs, their social needs, their cognitive needs, etc. So I think that I won't put you to sleep, so we'll just move on.
Okay, so most of us probably have some sort of social media account or use it on a daily basis, but there actually have been studies done that share what the main motivations for actually using social media are. And some of these will be pretty obvious, but I encourage everyone to kind of think about each one of them and how the students and even yourselves are using it to kind of meet these motivations. So first, nurturing friendships. A lot of times this is how our students are initially interacting with each other when they're, meeting each other, and then they immediately will add each other on Facebook or follow each other on Twitter or Instagram. And so they spend a lot of time on social media just nurturing the friendships that they have and creating new friendships. It's how they interact with others. It's how they, just kind of keep tabs on everyone, which we'll talk about. And it helps them to maintain existing relationships. A lot of students that may not actually get to see each other on a day-to-day basis, they can check in with people and make sure that they are still, keeping those friendships. And this is how a lot of people communicate. It's not as much texting, it's Facebook messaging and replying to people's tweets on Twitter. And so that's their kind of next step on how they maintain those relationships. Number 3, it helps enhance your reputation. Whether we like to admit it or not, a lot of people base what they think about people off of their social media profiles. You can look at this in a couple of ways, both socially and professionally. So it can help enhance students' reputations by, having multiple followers, making sure that, they are having a social media account that a lot of people are following, so people look to them for trends and advice and such like that. But also can help enhance your reputation professionally. That's something we'll talk about later in the presentation, but how who they're following on Twitter, what they're retweeting, what they're posting on Facebook. A lot of people that have these friendships and follow people on social media will look up to people that they view in that light. One thing that's really important, especially in this day and age with a lot of our college-age students struggling with mental health issues, is that it helps avoid loneliness. We have a lot of students that this is kind of their main form of communication and main form of staying in contact with people and keeping them occupied, and this is how they inform themselves. And so this is really how, unfortunately, sometimes they keep really, really tight connections with people is via social media. It's sharing things and having people like them and just making new friends and keeping those friendships together. It helps them avoid being lonely. It serves as that outlet of friendship. It helps keep tabs on others. I don't know how many of you have children or have parents on Facebook, and that's really how they keep track of you. I know I get phone calls and texts from my mother all the time being like, oh, I saw what you put on Facebook, or I saw what you shared on LinkedIn and stuff like that. So it helps keep tabs on others. A lot of students will post when they're studying abroad or going on vacation or, doing something exciting, and that's basically how everyone knows what everyone's doing. It's kind of this oversharing part of our population that we're, part of our lives. Everyone shares everything on social media. They check in places. They post pictures. So it really helps people keep track of what their friends are doing and what their family is doing. And then lastly, just pure entertainment. I mean, I don't know how many people retweet funny videos on YouTube or, they retweet funny things. They share things on Instagram that are short videos. So it's a really good source of entertainment. A lot of times this is where students go initially to figure out what's going on and what's funny and what's the newest thing on TV or what's the best thing that someone saw over the weekend. So it provides a really good source of entertainment for people. But I won't bore you with that. We'll move on.
So these next couple slides, they will kind of cover the points that we listed in what we covered today, kind of the today's college student and how social media ties into that as they are growing through those stages of development that we chatted about. So transition to college, social media sites, personal blogs, discussion forums, other social media outlets. They will help ease the student's transition from high school to college. So all of your new member classes that you just got PC 15. Wow, that's crazy. I'm getting old. So your PC 15, they're transitioning to college here. And the social media kind of provides them with information and that social support that Caitlin was talking about. And also it's a way for them to find and connect with other students on campus and within their PC as they're making those pledge class groups on Facebook, etc. So social media has the ability, again, to connect students to each other and also to the university, because that transition into campus life for a new student is very significant. It occurs, through the adjustment into their campus networks, through, again, those social, emotional, and academic needs, because it's not as simple as just cutting their ties with their high school friends and their previous relationships. Because it's not just as simple. There's a lot of studies out there where they encourage and they want the freshman college student to maintain those interactions from high school as they adjust to college. It's part of that integration piece. So in other words, they're trying to learn the rules of the college game, and still keeping touch with their high school friends can kind of help with that transition period, especially when they're connected through social media. So it's very important for these young adults for their ongoing development. Communication with friends that occurs on Facebook. This is a quote: "It may help young adults resolve key development issues that may be present during emerging adulthood." So even some of those mental health issues that Caitlin kind of mentioned, this could potentially help with that, with those communication lines open on social media. So this explains why students seem invested in building and maintaining those relationships online through their social media. So it's just kind of important for that development piece. So this not only helps retain them to the university, but it also helps kind of retain them in your chapter as well, while your new members are kind of deciding, is this the right fit for me? Am I the right fit with these women? So that social media will, again, play a huge piece through their first transition to college.
And self-expression. This is a very, very prominent use of social media for a lot of students and for just people in general. It really provides an opportunity for people to display their identities kind of without fearing too much judgment. It gives them an opportunity to really share. Sometimes people say people overshare, but like this says, blogs have been found to have a positive influence that allows students to expand their network and express their true self. Students use social media to display their voice, even if they're internally struggling with it. It's kind of the I'm sitting behind a computer screen or something so I can really express myself. And they've said that social capital has been studied numerous times to social media activity of teens and young adults. And one researcher defines social capital saying that the frequency of face-to-face interaction with close friends, numbers of offline acquaintances, the level of bridging capital, in the absence of reported loneliness. So it kind of wraps all of that up. And they've also found that social networking sites help connect individuals with an ability to share common experiences in small and large networks. So sharing those common experiences, finding people, connecting with people like that, and facilitating social ties that were once considered loose to become stronger and future resources. A person also observed that Facebook has the ability to strengthen offline connections. So a lot of times students will see something on Facebook that one of their friends have posted or an acquaintance have posted, and they actually bring that up outside of social media, and it helps them rebuild those relationships, just outside, like face-to-face, which is really beneficial. They also said that students have reported students have lower satisfaction and self-esteem, could actually gain more confidence and social capital if Facebook was used more often. It expanded them to more networks that they didn't, initially have outside of that. So it's really beneficial for students to be able to take the time and find people that they're connected with through all this opportunity of self-expression that they don't necessarily have just the confidence of just sitting, at a table with one of their sisters or with another student. They can actually find resources, share things. It's as easy as pressing a button like retweeting something that is another level of self-expression. So it makes it easier for students to really kind of expand on their authentic self.
And so then we'll jump into campus involvement. There's many theories out there as well that have explored the college student involvement, and it's defined, if you didn't know, that the amount of physical and psychological energy that the student devotes to the academic experience. So a student involved on campus will be more successful, which I think we could all agree to that the co-curricular experience is extremely important, and just being involved in Kappa already outside of their classes is a huge step with that. There was a study done showing that the highest users of Facebook felt more connected to the university. I totally agree. The impact of student use of social media and how involved that they become was positively correlated. And when I kind of think of that, I hear students all the time talking about, oh, I saw that posted on Facebook, or I saw that application tweeted out by the student government. So the social media aspect is definitely the first stop in kind of the front lines and getting to our students. So I think that's an important kind of statistic to know. It was explained that when students were active participants through posting events and posting pictures on Instagram and commenting on different posts from the university or from their Kappa chapter, that they're most likely to show that same activity level on campus. So as much as we're telling them to put their phones away in chapter and get off them in chapter, maybe we can encourage them outside of that to jump on their social media outlets and be looking to see what's going on campus, to be keeping up to date with their chapter website or the chapter Facebook page that you may or may not have, because this can really help your women get engaged not only within the chapter, but also engaged on campus, which is exactly what we want and extremely positive for their development.
So this kind of goes off what I mentioned before, and going back to the 6 motivations for using social media. But so maintaining those existing relationships and fostering new connections is the #1 reason and byproduct of social media use in college students. I don't know how many of you have heard your students on bid day being like, oh my gosh, I just have like 50 friend requests. It's a very, kind of instant way for people to get connected and make sure that they are kind of keeping up on what everyone is doing. And I can't tell you how many times I've had students in my office saying, oh my gosh, like that's so great, congratulations on something, to a student that they've seen something positive on Facebook about. And so initially that's their first kind of source of finding out what someone's up to, what the news is, talking about all that kind of stuff with what's going on with their friends, what's going on with their sisters, what's going on campus. It's the initial first kind of place everyone goes to find that information. So it really helps develop the relationships, like I said, and bring them outside of the media realm and back into the interpersonal, right in front of you, face-to-face relationship building.
And so then just a couple other benefits that we found, that the intensity of Facebook was related to kind of civic participation and service, life satisfaction, and social trust. And this one, which I thought was interesting, that when using Twitter in a first-year seminar course, those students in that experiment group using Twitter resulted in higher GPAs than the others that didn't. So I know we're always competing for wanting to be top in grades on our campuses, so who knew that social media could play into that? So again, these are just a couple other benefits of social media. So maybe not harping on our chapter women as much all the time, unless it starts getting out of hand, which we have an example social media contract at the end of this that we'll get to later. But Kayla and I just were hoping to share all of the benefits that social media has for us out there. Oh.
Okay, so I'm sure many of you are familiar with all of the social media sites that Kappa Kappa Gamma has, and I would really encourage you, if you're not, to get familiar with them, because Kappa does a really great job of connecting with our undergraduate and our alumni members through their social media. So on Facebook, you'll notice that Kappa will post pictures that people send in and ask questions and get responses and likes from people. People and members interact with it very, very well. Same with Twitter. Kappa is really great at retweeting undergraduates' tweets. They have their hashtags on there, and it's a really great way of kind of letting everyone else in the world know what's going on in our organization. Like I said, social media is one of the first places people go to look for news now, or just to look for information. If you Google something, one of the first things that pops up happens to most of the time be a social media site. And so Kappa does a really great job of integrating social media with its members. Same with Pinterest, a lot of great recruitment ideas and decorating and all that kind of stuff's on there. And Instagram, a lot of students get their photos featured on the Kappa Instagram page. So it's really great to be involved on that and kind of keep up on that. It's a really great way to just be a little bit more informed about what Kappas are doing all across the nation. And all of these are on the Kappa website, which is also a very great resource.
And then just a couple other social media sites that y'all may or may not be aware of that I'm sure your chapter women are using, and we just wanted to let y'all know. There's Yik Yak out there, which kind of has a negative connotation to it because it's an anonymous posting site where you can post things and you can't see where it came from or who said it. And I know Kappa had a hashtag campaign, hashtag Yik Yak Yuck. I think that was last spring, and that was on the PR webinar last spring. So if you're curious about that, you could check the archives on that. But just a heads up that that application is out there, and I honestly think it's dying down, at least here at Washington State where I work. Students do not talk about it as often. But then there's Snapchat, which is very popular as well. You can take pictures of yourself and send them to your friends for up to 10 seconds and then they disappear. So just be aware that your women might be using that. Maybe you're even on Snapchat. And then there's GroupMe, which is a great application where you can put, I think, up to 10 or 12 members in the group, and you can all message each other really quickly. It's kind of quicker than group text, at least for my Android phone that I have, it is quicker. So I know I'm in a group with all the Panhellenic women I advise, so maybe some of your chapter council or committees might be utilizing it, which I think would be really great. So these are just a couple other social media sites we wanted to throw out there just to make sure you knew about them in case you hear your women talking about them.
So kind of going off of Megan explaining that, our chapters have been using social media in a lot of really cool ways. I'm sorry, Megan, could you go back to the previous slide?
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Sorry. And the students are always like constantly shocking me at the great ways they're using social media, because that's, I'm not saying email is a thing of the past, but as far as like the instant response rate, social media is definitely the way to go for some things. I've seen a lot of social media platforms being used just in general chapter management, PR, recruitment, alumni engagement, kind of like I was mentioning with Kappa's Facebook pages and Instagram and such. GroupMe, which Megan mentioned on the last screen, is a great way to group message people. A lot of students can get really annoyed, and I don't know how many of you have ever been in a group text message that you can't get out of. GroupMe is a really great messaging tool that a lot of chapters use. I see them using it, just executive boards will have a GroupMe. It's very instant. It's for them, they can send, hey, meeting change, don't forget to mention this, just really quick notes. It's a very, very good way for instant messaging that anyone can download from to their phone. Also, like Megan mentioned, Yik Yak is kind of dying down. I've noticed on my campus that a lot of times Yik Yak is just very popular during certain times of the year, one of those being fraternity and sorority recruitment, which is really unfortunate, but like she said, it's an anonymous posting site where people can just post whatever they want, and people can either upvote it or downvote it. And so one thing I've seen students do is actually kind of flooding these negative sites with positive information. So a lot of times if something is mentioned on there, kind of putting a down note on Greek life, they'll flood it with positive. So chapters have found ways to utilize social media in really, really great ways.
Hey guys, can I jump in for just a second?
Yeah.
One note on the group meetings, just as a thought, because it came up a couple times this year, is that the group meetings are not necessarily just private groups where they're not upheld to the same Kappa standards, particularly if it's an all Kappa group. We want to make sure that we're all above board and everything's friendly, and that we're not promoting events that aren't necessarily ones where we've got EPS and documentation for. So we still have to make sure all of our Kappa policies fall in line with these particular ones, because we've been used, some groups have been using them outside of that, and we've gotten into some hot water, but easily avoidable if we're all on the same page.
Yeah, and that's, I think, one thing, too, that's really great about Megan and I sharing kind of all these different social media platforms is, like, make sure that you're talking with your chapters about this and talking with your women, because if we're not aware of how they're using these social media outlets, like, there can be stuff going on that we just don't know about. So just, asking, like, hey, do you all have a group me? Could I be added to it? A lot of chapters also have like private Facebook pages that only their executive boards use, and sometimes we don't even know what's going on. So it's a good idea to be kind of really privy to the information as far as where we think our members are sharing information.
Great. So just a few other ways about how our chapters are using social media. Again, there's those private Facebook group pages where chapters will post kind of instant updates. Many of the chapters will kind of post sisterhood event ideas or t-shirt ideas, or throw out a quick vote on something for Mom's Weekend or Dad's Weekend, and they'll take a vote just by how many likes are on that specific comment. So I'm sure that your chapters are involved with that. And again, Facebook is definitely one of the quickest ways to stay in touch with and also engage with our alumni, which is really important. So I think it's great to keep in touch with your PR chair to make sure they're keeping that Facebook page up to date. And alumni always love seeing pictures of the house or what's going on with the events that you're doing. So again, that's a really quick and easy way to stay in touch with the alumni of your chapter. Often social media is the first introduction that PNMs have to an organization or your new members too. Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram tend to be, again, the first places that people look for information about organizations. So it's definitely important to keep those social media platforms, Tumblr as well, kind of up to date and appropriate with pictures, etc., and representing Kappa in a positive light. And then again, that Snapchat application, it's used less often for chapter purposes. It's pretty popular just kind of individually. Some Kappa chapters may or may not use it, kind of for a check-in, for study groups at the library, or letting them know, like, hey, I checked into the table here for whatever event might be going on. So that can be a popular quick snippet.
And one thing too, I know I saw on the little question board that some of these social media outlets you may not be familiar with. It may be the first time you're hearing this, or aren't sure how to use it. I would highly encourage you to ask the chapter members that you're working with, like, hey, like, I want to know how to use Twitter. They would probably be more than happy to share that with you. Often my students end up knowing more about the new updates to apps and what apps are becoming more popular than I do, and so I'm always, kind of tapping my students' brains for how do I use this? What's the best way to do it? Because they're often 10 steps ahead of us when it comes to social media, and I'm sure they would be like, really tickled to actually sit down and teach you, oh, this is how you use it. I just recently had an advisor want to learn how to use Instagram, and a student, showed her. Now she Instagrams more than I do. So I'd highly encourage you to do that. This is an example social media contract that some chapters have used to kind of hold people accountable. One thing I know I'm very thankful for my undergraduate Kappa experience is that I now have like a very, very clean Facebook presence and social media presence. Often the first place an employer will go to find information when you apply for a job is they will search you on social media, and you want to make sure that you have a very appropriate social media presence. And I think a lot of that stems from how we hold our undergraduate members accountable during their college years. So this basically just goes through and lets members know, what's appropriate, what's inappropriate, making sure that you have a very clean, presentable, Kappa-friendly social image. It goes, this can be tailored chapter to chapter, and obviously, you know, depending on how the chapter operates, you can put things in there. But I think it's very important that we hold our chapter members accountable on social media, because it's kind of along that concept of you're always wearing your letters. You know, regardless of whether or not your profile picture has KKG on a t-shirt or something like that, people that know you're a Kappa, and you need to be presenting that at all times. So this is a really great tool to use for PR chairs or standards boards, or however you choose to do it in your chapter, to hold people accountable to that.
And so we're wrapping up here. These are just a couple of takeaways that we wanted to touch base on as we wrap up. That one, there are benefits and consequences to social media use for college students. As Caitlin said, we want to make sure we're always representing and wearing our letters in the best light for Kappa. Two, the distinguishing factors is the type of post and the frequency, and most importantly, the motivation for social media activity. Social media can both increase and decrease self-esteem, especially, again, those new members that are having that transition from high school to college. I think that's really important to be aware of, and making sure that we're checking up on them. And then students may be more aware of the negative behavior or impact than the positive that we've noted throughout this presentation. They might be scared of being sent to standards, or I'm not going to post this because at this, you know, you can think of the gossip or drama that might happen in your chapter. So I think it's important to kind of highlight the positive notes that we've gone over in our presentation here tonight. And then new research on social media. It's being released and continually researched day to day. So I think we just all need to be sure to stay open to new social media as it emerges and research continues to grow. So old dogs, we can learn new tricks. Social media, it's so hard to stay on top of, and it seems like there's a new app released every day. But Caitlin had a great point, and we should all be staying connected with our members, because I'm sure that they would be tickled, again, to help teach us the ways of the ropes that these new young women are learning. So those were just a couple of takeaways that we had.
And this is our contact information. Megan and I are like so happy to help any of you, even if it is learning how to use an app. Those are our phone numbers and our emails. We love staying connected with people, even if it is on social media, because that's obviously the up-and-coming thing to keep up on. So feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions, or even if you find some information that you think is worth sharing. We love hearing stuff like that.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for presenting this evening. I don't have too many questions, so I actually don't think I really have any that we haven't already covered. So I'll give just a second to see if there's any last-minute ones that slide in. But otherwise, I think we can, wrap up for the evening.
Well, thank you guys so much. Enjoy the rest of your week.
Yeah, thank you guys. As you go to close the system, a survey is going to pop up. If you would just take a few moments to fill out the survey, it really helps us shape our future training events and gives us useful information on how to improve what we're doing. Thank you all so much for being with us tonight, and we hope that you join another training webinar again soon. Thanks.